So we've talked lots before on Forbes about the IoT threat. And what we mean by this is we look at safeguarding our phones, our tablets, and our computers, and we forget about safeguarding our smart light bulbs and our smart kettles and our smart toasters and our smart plugs.
I've written quite a lot about IoT threats, and I think most recently about a not so smart air fryer that had quite nasty vulnerabilities that were discovered. The thing about IoT threats, the IoT device security threat, it's double-headed. So in my opinion, there are two things to worry about. One is passwords and the other are vulnerabilities.
The biggest issue for IoT devices, without a doubt, is the fact that when they're built, they're often built without security in mind at all. So, you know, people want to get these new products out, they want to get them to market quickly, and they just build them as products that are going to sell well.
But if we give all of those devices access to our home Wi-Fi, they in essence become an easy access point because they're connected to the internet and they know our credentials. So they have automatic access to all of our stuff and they can communicate that to the outside world.
Currently, it's very difficult most of the time. And I know this because I've looked at this myself and found things. It's very difficult to actually report that vulnerability to anybody in the company. Trying to get hold of anybody other than sales is impossible.
So we talked to Jake Moore, who's a former digital forensic investigator for the police, but also has written lots about how people out there can just stay safe and secure their IoT devices. So we talked to him for SVC. Jake, we've seen two really interesting stories this week. One was around router security, so or lack thereof, old router carrying the factory password, you know, heavily unsecured. And the other one was about smart plugs, straight off a, you know, off a container from China, plugged in. You give them your, you know, your Wi-Fi creds, your, you know, internet identity and your password. And then, you know, that ultimately allows that device to connect to your Wi-Fi, but also to share those credentials with anyone it wants, right? So it's wholly insecure. But what this has done is highlighted the lack of IoT security, the lack of awareness, right?
Yeah. People desire the ultimate speed for getting devices to work straight out of the box. They want them just to plug in and just work from their phone. And we've got to a stage where it can be relatively quickly to do that. But that's at the detriment of protection and security. If anything, that should be a time where we're teaching people. People are lacking awareness, education. Why not get them when they have the device, they want to use it, just to say, right, just follow a couple of steps. Just maybe adding some basic things like two-factor authentication or saying, whoa, that password cannot be used. Let's get something better than that. But people don't want to learn. They just want to get whatever it is that's new and shiny to work. And sadly, that war seems to be winning.
There's much more awareness now around, you know, security of our apps, our phones, our computers, the platforms we use online, and 2FA, as you say, for accessing all of these things. IoT, home IoT particularly, has almost like escaped that. I remember writing an article a couple of years ago about, you know, you plug a device into your Wi-Fi and it immediately goes out and looks for firmware update, and you're like, great, here's all my Wi-Fi credits, connect to China and see if you can find a file to bring into my house. And everyone thought it was kind of, in those days, it was a bit crazy to talk about these IoT vulnerabilities. That's garnered a lot of publicity since, but it's still, the lack of security in our home internet is crazy, right? You know, anything, you know, we've got dozens of devices connected. Anything, we allow anything to connect, toys, kitchen gadgets, all of our tablets and smart devices. And no one seems to have cottoned onto a way to sort this out or improve this yet.
Yeah, I think it's bad security practice from both user and manufacturer. I don't think we can just target the user for this or the manufacturer. It's an approach that's required from everyone. All angles need to come together and build on their own security and make those devices better. But it comes down to people just want ease of use. They want it to work. But when you talk about routers, I don't think people even understand what a router does. They know they need it. It has to sit in the house. Okay, it's got to come with a password, but most people don't want to go and change their password, let alone go into the settings of the router. Many people don't realize there will be two passwords on the back of their device. In fact, I've even been in people's houses and they've said, oh, this is the password for the router, for the Wi-Fi. They're giving me the router password, and they don't necessarily distinguish the difference because they haven't got that understanding. And you can't blame them for that. Some people don't want to be involved in tech. They just want things to work straight out the box. And so if you've got a router that's offering you a password, we're taught that that password is secure from an early age. I know I have for the last 20 years, starting out with passwords. You could get away with an Outlook password, or Hotmail as it was, but that was 4 characters long when I started out. That was the default, let alone just using lowercase. But of course, we need more complex things nowadays, and the understanding is lost.
Clearly, people treat routers like appliances, so it's almost like plug and play, and it isn't. It's a computer, so it has administration settings. You can log into the router itself, and you can change all kinds of things, and that ultimately is the controller for your home internet. So we confuse that with the Wi-Fi and the ability for devices to wirelessly connect and the password you require to do that. And most people, literally take the router, plug it in, use the password that's scribbled on the back, and then forget about it because the assumption is it's fine. It's in a cupboard or on a shelf. But the reality is that the actual control of your home internet isn't the SSID for the Wi-Fi. It's what that router is actually doing. That's the connection to the outside world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And those routers can be old. Lots of people haven't changed their ISP for years, and so they'll have an old router, possibly 6, maybe even 10 years old. I mean, this can happen. Only last month I was walking past a house and the router was on the windowsill facing inwards, and on the back, there it was with the password. This is crazy. This can happen, but people think, it's not going to happen to us. And that's a really key point here. Whether it's tracking, whether it's security, whether it's driving with a phone in their hand, people still think that'll never happen to me.
Whether it's smart plugs or routers, what would be the tips for people to stay safe?
Top tips, I would always say, think of your router as the mothership of your home network. That is your number one thing you want to be protecting. You need to have a big wall around it, and then another load of another wall around it as well. Just thinking that if anyone gets into that, they've got into everything. All the end devices, endpoint protection is required on that, because that's where your data is. If anything's going to get in, once it's in your network onto each device, it's going to want to steal any data. So you're going to have endpoint protection is a must on there. Any IoT device that you're sticking on your home network, I would only recommend those that have multi-factor authentication as standard, and allow you to use long, complex passwords, not the default ones. Never touch a default password, even if it looks complex. There's something about them I don't really trust, even if it looks like something I can't say. That's great, but there are always going to be better complex passwords out there. Over 20 characters, 25 characters even. Use them and then stick them in a password manager, absolutely necessity. And then again, if people come around and they want to use your network, you say, well, that's for me. Look, I work from home now. My data is absolutely paramount to me. And it's so vital that I'm in control of it. And so I hope you don't mind as I'm throwing you onto the guest network, which is just as fast.
3 things in order of priority: change the passwords on anything you connect, and don't reuse those passwords. Certainly don't give an IoT device a password you use anywhere else. Update the firmware if you can, make sure it's up to date, because it will have been patched on the rest of it. And then it's a bit more painful to do, but if you want to stay secure, use a guest network on your Wi-Fi, just to ensure that not everything has access to everything else that you're connected to.
I think that's perfect. Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth.